I'm going to do a little demonstration of free fall so that you kind of get a feel for it. There's a mock-up here, maybe of the Morgan Stanley building in Oxnard. I'm sure you're all familiar with that building. Okay, the scale of this building is the same scale of a building that I also built as a mock-up, which unfortunately is crumbled up in the back of the room because it kind of came apart. But that one in the back of the room, I'm going to simulate the building itself. It's 6 feet tall. 6 feet tall, and the width was to scale, it's 1/100th of the size of the real building 7. So I scaled down, just happened to be 6 feet, and that's kind of a convenient thing. And then built this to the same scale, and this is about a little less than 3 feet higher. So what we're going to do, if we've got 3 volunteers to be stopwatch people, I'm going to time a free fall ball off the top of the Morgan Stanley building. Good. Volunteers over here? How about one over here? Okay. I'll go to the next chart first to give you on the next chart. This is an equation. I apologize for that. The top equation, d equals 1/2 at squared, is the equation for the distance a object would fall from any acceleration for a length of time t. Well, what we would like to do is measure the time t because we know the distance it's going to fall. So you can write this in a different way. The t equals the square root of 2 over d, and then I plugged in this number 32.2, which is the number for gravity. So if we're on the Earth, which we are, then the number is 32.2. So that number, it's kind of a simple equation, can be used to figure out how long it should take in free fall. And I've actually computed it along the bottom. So it says that the model, I shouldn't let you people with the stopwatches know what the answer is. But so I've computed it for the small building, the model that I will represent with myself, that's 6 feet. And then you can see what that means using the same equation for building 7 that was 610 feet tall. Okay, stopwatch people, do you know how to operate the stopwatch?
No.
Okay, just try it once. See if you can find a start button or something like that.
Here.
And a stop button, do you have that?
Same thing.
Okay, so I'm going to drop this, and so you get it when it starts and when it stops. If it turns out you get weird answers, we'll do it a second time. I'm going to go 3, 2, 1, drop. 3, 2, 1, drop. Okay, what did you get?
I think it stalled out, but it was a little over 1 second.
A little over 1 second.
0097.
0097. That's a little bit less than 1/10 of a second. Quite a difference.
She hit it twice. Yeah.
Okay, and who was the other person? Over there. What'd you get?
2,500.
2,500ths of a second. Okay, my whole idea was to take the middle number, 0.25, kind of close, I think. We'll take that. Okay, now then I'm going to simulate building 7, and I'm going to do the same thing. You ready? 3, 2, 1, drop. 3/3700ths? 47. 0.47.
Aren't you supposed to hit it again when you hit the ground?
Yeah. What did you get?
You're still not
Oh, it's still running. Okay. That's going to be the tall number. 3700s. Okay, 3700s will be our, what do you say yours was? Okay, 47 is the middle one. 4700s. And this is 6100s. So you can kind of get the idea, right? The building was more than twice as tall, the second building, but the time was less than twice as much, and it's because you're dealing with a square number. It's not just directly proportional. And I'll just say that this number then, computed with the same equation, says that building 7 should have taken, if it came down in free fall, 6.2 seconds. And the best estimate is it's slightly under 7 seconds, what it took for building 7 to come down.
If we look at what we can see of building 7 in this photo, the top 18 floors. If the free fall equation is applied to those 18 floors, the time for those floors to fall from view, if it would have been pure free fall, would be about 3.8 seconds. It was pure free fall for the first 2.25 seconds, corresponding to 8 floors. Watch for the free fall now.
Now what I'm going to do is go through the same 4 kind of major points and tell you what NIST is the National Institute for Standards and Technology. It's part of the Department of Commerce. And you can wonder why were they involved, but Congress gave them the authority to be the investigators of the World Trade Center buildings and issue a final reports. So that's why it's NIST. And I will just tell you how NIST spun these things. Spun, or whatever you want to say.
Dismissed it.
Yeah. Okay, first of all, the fires themselves. Standard fires don't burn hot enough. NIST said, well, number one, they do burn hot enough. But number two, the fires started as a result of the debris from the nearest twin tower, which is building 1. The debris started these fires. That's what they said. It turns out that we have no visual evidence that there were any fires that started that we can see until at least 90 minutes after the debris struck the building. So NIST is kind of, you don't know whether they're right or wrong, but they said it. They have access to all of these videos and pictures. They only release a few of them. So maybe they have the evidence and we just don't know about it. Next chart. Okay, this is looking at the different floors. NIST said that there were fires on the floors that I've got listed there. And in the floors kind of over in the right hand between 7 and 13 is where the fires became so hot that it caused things to happen which netted in the whole building coming down. But you have to, they also said that there was no spread of fires between one floor and another, which means the fires that they claim caused the building to come down, we don't have any evidence that they even started for at least 3, maybe 4 hours after this debris struck the building. Big question. Next chart. This is having to do with the extraordinarily hot temperatures. NIST basically acted as if there was no evidence. When they were questioned in different press meetings about it, they would say, we have no evidence that there was any extreme temperatures. Or if they were said, well, what about the eyewitnesses that said they saw molten metal? The answer back was, we know of no one that said that. So it's just that kind of a stonewalling statement saying we don't know anything about that and press on. They did not even test for explosives in when they were questioned about it. They said, well, it might not be conclusive, and we didn't want to waste taxpayers' money. Okay, when it comes to the free fall, NIST, whereas they had said for years that the building came down 40% slower than free fall, they were basically pushed into a corner by one of the independent researchers, David Chandler. He's a physics teacher. He made such a clear, he made a video that showed precisely, he measured each pixel as the building came down and converted that to position and then integrated it to velocity and finally acceleration. So he computed that it was pure gravity acceleration for a little over 2 seconds. I mean, it was so compelling that NIST had no option. Well, they probably did, they could have just ignored it. But they did agree that it was free fall acceleration. But they did not change any findings or any conclusion. It was as if it didn't happen. So, and they kind of hid it as well. When they listed their changes going into the final report from the draft final report, they didn't list this change on their list of changes. So they didn't want people to find that admitting. Okay, next chart. Okay, this final one is just an example. It has to do with the analytical model that NIST used to analyze the building coming down. Their whole approach, rather than looking at evidence, they did not look at metal. When I talked about that early specimen that was recommended by FEMA to look at it more closely, what they did is looked at a way to distance themselves from it. So they said, we don't have any hard evidence that it came from Building 7, even though it was a kind of metal that was only in Building 7. But they reasoned somehow or other, their lawyers helped them reason, that it was not definitely from Building 7, so they just didn't do anything more on it. Okay, but on the computer model, first of all, this is what I think they did. They started out by looking at the video of the top of the building coming down. It came down for 18 stories before it got behind some other buildings. So you can look at that first 18 stories coming down. So they looked at it, and then they developed their computer model. And then the third thing, they announced that their computer model predicts the time that was shown in the video. In fact, it predicted it so close, it was the same, it was 5.4 seconds. They were the same tenth. Any teacher would know if a student came in with that kind of an answer from an experiment with theory that something's wrong here. But that's the way they did it. Then I've already told you that they officially announced that free fall did occur. They were forced into that. They just made a blanket statement that free fall is consistent with their model. They didn't show anything to the public. It just says, that's consistent with our model, and then they marched on. Okay, then we get to the point where there's a Freedom of Information request that went to NIST asking for all of the input data and the equations of their models so it could be checked independently. They stonewalled this for several years, and finally they came out with a finding that said they will not release it because it may endanger public safety. Well, it turns out the only authority that NIST had to deny a Freedom of Information request was for that very reason. And so the center director used the one piece of authority he had and made this declaration, may endanger public safety. Okay, so the person, structural engineer, who had submitted the Freedom of Information request, he then sent a letter back to the NIST center director saying, how in the world can you justify an answer like that? And a letter came back from the center director saying, we have a validated model And if it gets into the wrong hands, it might be used to bring down other buildings.